Today we're going to play Settlers of Catan. The goal of Catan is to be the first player to get 10 points. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Points are earned by building settlements, cities, earning special bonus cards, and achieving certain milestones on the board. And to get those things, you'll need to collect resources, because Catan is what's known as a contentious resource building game. Catan has a lot of little weird rules, and stick around to the end and I'll give you 10 of them that I think you should know. First, let's go over the basics. What you need: the original Catan game. It contains a game board made up of 19 hexagonal terrain tiles, circular number tokens, border tiles known as water tiles, 5 different resource cards, grain, lumber, wool, brick, and ore. Bonus development cards, the longest road and army special cards, 2 dice, reference cards for each player, colorful tiny pieces which make up your 4 cities, 5 settlements, and 15 roads, and there's a robber token. For your first few games, set up the board as suggested by the instructions, placing the hex tiles, number tokens, plus the initial settlements and roads like this. This setup will create a good balanced game for your first few playthroughs. In the future, you can shuffle the tiles and tokens for a more random board. Either way, you first arrange the board. Each player receives 5 settlements, 4 cities, and 15 roads. If you aren't playing with a suggested board setup, shuffle the hexagons and put them randomly in the water frame. Do the same with the number tokens. These correspond with dice rolls, determining which resources are produced each turn. The desert piece does not get a token because it's barren. Instead, place the robber on the desert hex. And all players will now place their initial settlements and roads. Roll to see who goes first. The highest roll will place 1 settlement at the intersection of 3 hexagons, like this, or this, or this. They could place a settlement on the intersection of just 2 hexagons here by the water, but probably not the best early strategy. After placing the settlement, they will also place 1 road on the crease between their settlement and the opposite intersection, like this, or this, or this. Proceeding clockwise, the rest of the players take turns doing the same until the last player has placed their first settlement and road. Then that last player gets to put down a second settlement with a connected road. Now proceeding the other direction, counterclockwise, the rest of the players put down their second settlement and road. Now could they put a settlement here? No. There must be 2 intersections between every settlement, your settlement included. You should have your settlements near resources that you want to collect, also that have a likelihood of generating more often. This is the major game mechanic in Catan. Look at the number tokens in the 3 hexes that your settlement is intersecting. If that number is rolled on the 2 dice, then you get that resource. So if it's a number like 6 or 8, it will come up more often. If it's a number like 2 or 12, good luck on seeing those numbers come up more than a few times in the game, if at all. So be strategic at the placement stage. Okay, everybody's made their choices. As a bonus, we all get a resource from the hex tile adjacent to our second place settlements. So I would get 1 stone and 2 wood. Blue would get 2 wool and 1 wheat. Red would get 1 brick, 1 wood, and 1 wool. Our resources cards would be face down. Play proceeds clockwise in turns. Each turn has 3 phases: roll, trade, and build. Of the 3, the only mandatory phase is roll. You roll for resources. The active player rolls both dice. 4. The result of the roll determines which number tile produces resources for that turn. It doesn't matter whose turn it was. If you have a settlement or city on the intersection of the rolled numbered tile or tiles, you get 1 of those resource cards per settlement and 2 per city. More on that in a bit. The resource cards are in face-up piles, so you just take the right amount and put the resource card or cards into your hand. Red here is adjacent to this tile, and it has a 4. That means they get 1 wood. If instead we had rolled an 8, we'd look who's adjacent to 8. Well, blue is adjacent to this wheat 8. They get 1 for that. They're also adjacent to the pasture, so they get 1 wool. And since that settlement is also adjacent to the wheat field, they get 1 more grain card. My orange piece here is adjacent to the wool as well, so I would get 1 wool. 1 roll can have multiple cards given to multiple players. Part 2 of the turn is trade. Whether or not you've collected resources, you can now make trades if you'd like. To make a trade, the person whose turn it is has to be a part of that trade. Other players can't make side trades during your turn. There's no other rule other than being a good negotiator. Hey, I'll trade you my stone for your brick. I mean, it really helps you out more than it helps me out. I'm just altruistic. You can also trade with the bank. If you have 4 cards of the same type, you can trade them in for any 1 resource. For example, let's say I have 5 wood and I'd really like 1 brick. On my turn, I can trade in the 4 wood and take 1 brick. You could get even better deals with the bank if you have either a settlement or a city adjacent to a harbor. If you put a settlement at one of those intersections, you can get a better trade rate. 3 cards of the same resource for any one at this dock. For example, that means I'd only need to trade in 3 wood for 1 brick. These other harbors have 2-to-1 rates for specific cards. So if you keep generating a lot of wool, you might want to try to build a settlement here so you can offload your flock for something you need more than those mangy sheep. Your last turn action is build and buy. You can spend resources to build roads, settlements, cities, or buy development cards. Roads cost 1 lumber and 1 brick. Settlements cost 1 lumber, 1 brick, 1 grain, 1 wool, and must be built at least 2 road lengths away from any other settlement and be connected by a road. Can't just plop one anywhere. Cities cost 2 grain plus 3 ore. They don't take new space, rather they upgrade your settlement. Remove your settlement and put this city token in its place. Cities are worth 2 points in your overall score, rather than the 1 for settlement. Also, a city produces double resources on its adjacent tile. You could also buy development cards. They cost 1 wool, 1 grain, 1 ore. Development cards offer various benefits and are kept secret until played. However, you can't play bought ones on the turn you bought them. You'll just have to wait until your next turn. There are 3 categories for them. Knight cards. Knights give you the chance to move the robber, which is very useful. Also, playing 3 knights will give you the largest army card. As long as you can hold that card, you have 2 extra victory points. This can also be claimed by another player with a larger army, not an equal army. Progress cards. These give you resources or pieces through different means. Finally, we have victory point cards. These give you 1 victory point each. Special victory points. The longest road. A player with the longest continuous road, at least 5 roads long, earns 2 victory points and puts this card in front of them. If it's tied, the card goes back to the bank. The robber. You may notice that none of the number tokens are the number 7, which is the most likely dice roll. What's up with that? If you roll a 7, no resources are produced. Instead, all players with more than 7 resource cards must discard half of them, rounded down. For example, this player has 14 cards. They'd have to take 7 cards out and put them back into the bank. You can choose which ones you want to put back to the bank. Next, the active player then moves the robber to any tile on the board. The robber sits on top of that hexagon's number tile, blocking the resource production on that tile until it's moved again. The player who moved it can also steal 1 resource card from a player with a settlement or city adjacent to that tile. This provides a tremendous disadvantage for the affected player, and it's a powerful strategy as well as a great way to make enemies. Play proceeds like this. You work to gather resources and expand your pieces with roads, settlements, and cities. Once you place a new settlement in a new intersection, you now get the rewards of those tiles should their numbers be rolled. Roads do not gather resources. Roads simply connect your settlements and cities. Ending the game. The game ends immediately when a player reaches 10 points on their turn. Points are counted through settlements, 1 point each, cities, 2 points each, largest army, 2 points, longest road, 2 points, victory point development cards, 1 point each, kept hidden until revealed. Here are 10 rules that often get confused and can create a pause in gameplay. 1. Placing the robber on the desert tile. What happens if you roll a 7 and put the robber back on the desert? It blocks no resource, but you can still steal a card from a player who has a settlement or city on an adjacent intersection. 2. Trading with the bank on ports. You can only use ports to trade if you have a settlement or a city on that port. A road doesn't count. 3. Playing development cards. You can play only 1 development card per turn. The only exception is victory point cards, which can be revealed immediately if they get you to 10 points. Otherwise, you cannot play a development card on the same turn you buy it. 4. Moving the robber with a knight card. When you play a knight card, you move the robber and steal a card from a player with a settlement or a city on that tile, just like when you roll a 7. But unlike rolling a 7, you don't make players with more than 7 cards discard half. 5. The distance rule for settlements. Every settlement must be at least 2 road lengths away from another settlement, including your own. Even if you build up a long stretch of road, you can't chain settlements closer together by road connections. They still need to be spaced out 2 roads apart. Limited pieces for each player. Each player has a limited number of settlements, cities, and roads in their supply. You can't build more than what you've started with. 5 settlements, 4 cities, and 15 roads. So once you've used them all, you're out of that structure unless you upgrade a settlement to a city, freeing up a settlement piece. Tiebreaker. If there's a tie for longest road or largest army, the player who received the card first continues to hold it. If another player has a higher amount, they take the card. Speaking of roads, a player's longest road must be continuous. If an opponent builds a settlement or city that interrupts your road, it breaks your continuous path, which might reduce the length of your longest road. This can cause you to lose the longest road card, even if you still have a lot of roads on the board. 9. Running out of resource cards. If the bank runs out of a particular resource, no new cards of that type can be taken from the bank until they get more. For example, a player who trades back to the bank. Even if your resource is rolled, you're simply out of luck until cards of that type return to the bank. You can still trade among other players, however. Just watch out for those hoarders. Buying a development card with no available cards. If the development card stack is empty, it's done. Play development cards stay in front of players. They aren't discarded and then reused. Final thoughts. Like Monopoly and Risk, this is a ragey game of cutthroat land grabs and unbalanced negotiations. If you're an experienced player and you're playing with new players, let them win. They'll never play this game ever again if you crush them. That said, it's a classic and incredibly rewarding when your early strategy blossoms into a resounding victory. Did I miss something? Do you play it differently? Or just want to say hi? Leave a comment below. Please subscribe, share, and like to help this channel grow. You are great. See you next time on Playing Games.